What did my hat just land on? Mr. Crispin here once again, and welcome to my workshop. Now, I've got a new baby. Is it a boy? Is it a girl? Is it something in between? No, actually it's a Jones and Shipman 540 model AP, and in the course of this video I'm going to show you how it got to where it is today. Now, to kick off, can you remember that old white surface grinder I had? You remember? The one George walked backwards into? No? Well, in case you've forgotten, here's a quick clip. Clear at my end. So that white thing with the bits poking out, no, not George, the surface grinder, is a 1950s-ish Jones and Shipman 540. A good machine. I had seen it in working order. It had a small hydraulic leak, needed a bit of wiring doing, etc. But it was a working machine, and I came across it on a scrap pile about to be thrown out, and I decided I would bring it home, and at some point I would get round to rebuilding it. Now, that was quite a few years ago, and whilst I was rebuilding the Harrison lathe I've got here, and I saw how much work goes into a machine tool overhaul, I decided I was never going to get round to rebuilding that machine. And what I decided to do was, if a good surface grinder came up, I would just swap them over. And about 2 months ago I had a tip off from a friend of mine, Phil Brooks, that a good condition Jones and Shipman 540 was being sold off by someone who was retiring. So I decided I would get the old one out and I would get a new one in. And over the course of this video I'm going to show you exactly how that happened. Now, we're going to kick off with getting the old one out, but before I do that I need to show you a little plan I came up with how to negotiate the obstacle of the outside path and workshop step. In the footage you're about to see, you will be looking from the inside out, but this is what's going on. I have a block paving path that leads all the way from the workshop door to the front of the drive. So manoeuvring the machine on the block paving with a pallet truck, although not ideal, is pretty straightforward. As long as the wheels don't get stuck on any lumps and bumps, I can at least wheel it up here with some confidence. The other things to note are the step and the plywood board. So the machine can wheel down here no problem, but then it's got to go that way, and to counter that problem, what I've devised is this wood on the lawn. So the pallet truck will come to here, put the machine down on wooden blocks, and I will then remove the pallet truck, reorientate it by 90 degrees, and I will then approach crossways, being able to get back onto the machine from where I left it on the blocks. From then you'll see how I get that over the step, but this is what's going on outside.
Yes.
All the way through.
That's worked fairly well.
The seesaw method does work, just a bit yeah, it's because we've got this other there's a lug around the back, it's trapping the bars together.
Nope.
Getting there, same again.
How are you getting the new one in?
Just this in reverse. What are you doing on Tuesday?
Getting physio.
Oh yeah. Well, I think this will probably help it.
Get one way or the other.
That's it.
It's looking pretty good as well.
Now what we need to do is take that back roller out. So if
is this front one big enough to go over onto the floor now?
Not quite, but we're nearly at the pallet truck, you see. So if I tip this forward to me, and you see if you can pull that back roller out altogether. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so now if it tips back down, I can get the tines of the pallet truck under this front lip.
It's going far too smoothly.
Solid as a rock. Here we go. Oh, that thing's not free.
Give it a good beat.
There we are, that's what should have happened.
Yeah,
Sort of steady it from the back, but should it try and fall over, just
it's
gonna
going to go anyway, it's going this way, isn't it?
go very slowly. And I'll try and stay near the wall-ish.
Especially on that side.
So that was about an hour and a half's work cut down to a few moments, and thanks very much to Dan for his assistance. I'm sure his physio found that he was greatly improved. Now on to getting the new one in, and it's basically the process in reverse.
Thinking about it.
Do you want me to lower off then?
Yeah, lower off. So sit we're down. So just pull it back probably 6 inches.
I've gone probably 3 inch now.
I think I've got a fear of these machines anyway because they're very unstable
Yeah.
in funny ways.
Mhm.
They're dead unstable that way.
Yeah. Well, on camera that probably looked like a piece of cake, but let me tell you, it wasn't. That took about 3.5 hours. This new machine has got extra bits on it, and it just made it that bit tighter coming down the path, turning it, etc. Ian Burgoyne did not have to stay and help me, but he did, and I'm grateful to him for doing that. So thank you, Ian. We got it in between us. Now the reason it took 3.5 hours was we stopped quite regularly to discuss exactly what we were going to do, and each manoeuvre we did carefully, because as Ian pointed out, high centre of gravity, they're not very stable. It would not take much to tip one of these over. So between the two of us we got it in, and now that it's in, I'm going to take a look at the coolant system. Looking at the coolant system, this is the basic box that it all works around. Now it's a sheet metal work assembly, and it basically is a box with a load of baffles and levels in it, and the coolant is returned into the top via a lid hopper arrangement into this portion, and it works its way around the sections, hopefully leaving behind the wheel grit and grinding swarf as it goes, where it eventually ends up down here where the old coolant pump gets it. Now I've had some trouble with this pump. When I first got the machine and fired it up, this pump immediately started decelerating until the fuse box started tripping out. Now basically it was seized up, and a friend of mine, Duncan Ravenscroft, was here doing a bit of wiring on something else. He whipped it apart and had a look, and basically there's a bearing in here that had seized up. Now I reintroduced some oil to that bearing and it's freed off, so I think it's okay. It at least turns easily now, so I'm going to reinstall this pump back down here, wire it back up again into the Dole starter, and I'll give this a go. Well, I got as far as offering the pump up to the coolant box, and I got the first bolt ready, and I thought, no, I can't do this. This pump needs new bearings. So I stopped the job, and I have gone and got some new bearings. I just couldn't face the idea of the bearings not working and then having to move the pump, having filled it, take it all to bits again, and basically get back to where I already was. So I decided just to do the bearings while I was at it. So that's that. I have been told not to keep this out of the motor too long, because apparently it can demagnetise, so I'm not sure how long exactly I'm allowed to keep that out for, but I'll try and be swift. So this is the actual pump motor, and down in the bottom goes this spring effect, and then some flat spacers. I don't know a great deal about the design of these things, I'm just putting it back together how it was. The piece then goes back in, and hopefully the new bearings fit okay in the nice push fit. Hopefully that's in far enough. Now interestingly, this piece has that sort of perforated metal thing. Now I didn't replace it. I'm not sure if that's there from new or if at some point it has been put in to make up for some play. This bore appears to be concentric in relation to the cast diameter, but it could well be that the casting is just out of round. Anyway, that goes down there, and I've nearly forgotten to put the piece of plastic on, whatever that does. Now that goes that way round, and the question is, yep, that seems nice and free to me, and no side play. Although the old one turned reasonably freely, there was a huge amount of side play, so that is a definite improvement. Just got to re-establish the timing of these holes, and I'll put it back together in fast forward now. For some reason, that is the back of this is contacting this face and has induced obviously some friction, so something is not quite right there. I did push that all the way in, and perhaps that shouldn't have gone all the way back. Right, that's that resolved. I took it apart again, and what I did was, rather than pushing the shaft down this way until it stopped, I pushed it down until it was just starting to make contact with the bearing housing, and then I offered this upwards and allowed this casting to raise the shaft until it reached the mating point, and that has left it nice and free in its done up position. So that sort of makes sense as well, that you don't want this shaft running against the top end, it's just being lifted into position by this. So I'm happy with that, and now I'm just going to put these little bits back on the lower end. There is the coolant system in its final place. I filled it up and it took about 75 litres. Now the electrics work, the pump bearings work, the weir system works, the pull out tray works, and also the knee buster works. What knee buster? This one. Yeah, watch out for those knee caps. So how to get a machine to sit on the floor. Now traditionally all I've done is put them down, and then I go around and maybe use shims of this kind of thickness, 1/16, 1.5mm, and just get them sitting right so they don't rock. Now on this occasion I've been a little more experimental, for the sole reason that a subscriber sent me a lifetime supply of a material called Tico. This is a high density sort of rubberized cork material. Yeah, very hard to compress but sort of flexible. And I'll save you the sales pitch. I've put a link in the description to their website, you can go and read about it if you want to. But the idea is anti-vibration, etc. Now the reason I thought it might be useful here is that although most of the floor in this workshop was done by a power float, this area, for you know, the circumstances of the day, ended up being a troweled finish. So there are quite a few undulations, and I thought perhaps this would help take those undulations out, because obviously a metal plate isn't very good, not very forgiving when there's undulations in the floor. So I thought this might help. Now first of all, what I did, I looked at the pattern of the actual machine's feet, and these machines of this age have two long feet like this and a small one at the back. And so I set up this arrangement with long Tico pads underneath and set it all up. Now I thought that was very good. When I came to run it, this is what happened. Each time the bed goes one way or the other, it's twitching the machine. So now what you just saw was that every time the bed changed direction, the inertia seemed to cause the machine to twitch slightly. And here's another quick clip that I took from down here. I've had a little coolant spill, and that's actually helping to illustrate the facts. So you could see there that the whole plate was compressing and decompressing every time the table came back and forth. Now I did a bit of asking around and a bit of thinking, and I thought that perhaps, although I had been quite careful to maintain a contact pattern that didn't induce a rock, maybe it is rocking, or either that or the cross section of Tico that's actually taking the weight isn't enough. So I've gone down the route of 4x4 inch squares, one at the front, one here, one at the back. Now that has a major advantage over this pattern in that it makes levelling of the machine much easier. You'll notice that I've got a thicker square here in terms of the plate thickness than here, and that is because I've been able to take the level out. When you've got an arrangement like this, trying to correct any level is very difficult, because if you raise this one up, then this one becomes free and you have to try and work out how much to raise this one, etc. With three squares you just do what you need to do. Now although you know, 3 points should never rock, and I don't think it is rocking, I am still getting a bit of a twitch every time the table goes back and forth. And to try and sort this out, I have tried just about every variant possible. I've tried putting the plates flat on the floor with no Tico. I've tried using plates all of the same thickness to make sure the contact points are nice and square. I've tried using plates of the same thickness on Tico. I've tried plates of different thicknesses to level it, In any case, the machine still twitches slightly every time the table goes back and forth. Admittedly, that is with the table at full speed, and for most surface grinding applications probably about half of that is actually more appropriate. So I'm going to draw a line under that for now. If you have any ideas, or you've leveled surface grinders in the past, or if you've had one that does twitch and you have fixed it, let me know in the comments. For now I'm going to move on and proceed with the setup, but that is what I've been up to with regards to sitting the machine on the floor. Next up, the dust extractor, and looking at the viewfinder I appear to have a hole in my trousers. My apologies. Anyway, this cost 75 quid and it needed a bit of a sort out. Under this lid is the actual rotor. This is what creates the extraction. That is driven by a motor that's just under here, and the extraction goes down. There's the bags, and I don't know if you can see, but at the bottom here there's the tray for collecting the bits. Now I've put all that together, and I have then turned my attention to the electrical side, and I have fitted a new to me Crabtree box. That goes on there like that. That's just a fuse box and isolator, so it basically goes motor, fuse box, plug. I fitted a plug. Often these are wired directly into the machine and you turn them on and off with the machine's control panel, but I've gone for the straightforward version of just having a plug. So that's that. I am now going to paint this dust extractor, and I'll be doing it in fast forward. I'm going to be doing 2 coats of red oxide and 2 coats of Jones and Shipman surface grinder blue, both in the Paragon paint brand. Now, to prepare this for painting, I rubbed the whole thing down with a Scotch-Brite pad that was soaked in paint thinners. That's got it nice and degreased, and I'll now be painting it with a mini roller and paintbrush where required. There is the finished dust extractor unit, and I've sat it on some Tico pads of its own as well. Now, one thing to try and avoid in any grinding setup is the transfer of vibrations from one piece of equipment to another. Not too bad in this workshop because there's only me in it, but there is an example of how vibrations could transfer from this into your surface finishes and grinding work. So hopefully by keeping everything on separate pads, I will prevent that from happening. We will see what happens when I start grinding in future videos. So the grinder is in, it's levelled, I've got a working coolant system, working extraction system, and now there's only one thing left to do, and that is to fire it up. Table traverse speed is set by the positioning of this lever, hydraulically controlled. And the positioning of the reverse points are set by this and a dog at either end. Cross speed power traverse is engaged by throwing this lever, and then that's one way, and reverse. The increment for the cross feed step over is set by this cam, which you can see whizzing around in there. And this lever here controls a set of stops for that crossfeed motion, which I'll show now. On this side of the machine, the arrangement for crossfeed cutout can be seen. It's a back plate with two dogs and an actuating lever. Now to set the mechanism, that lever goes down. Should you need to release it, there's a push button, but that lever stays down. And I'll start the bed up. Okay, now just so we're not waiting too long, I'll wind it in nearby, and I will now start the crossfeed motion. Let's try the other way. That's now feeding towards the dog, and when it hits the dog it should stop the feed. Ignore the drips, I'm just seeing where the leaks are. There we are, it's hit the dog, it's stopped the cross feed, and it's left the bed over, ready for me to inspect the work. I then back it off the dogs, reverse the direction of travel, and reset the lever. And it should now go back the other way, and it will keep coming till it hits that dog. Fine feed of the cross control is engaged by winding in this clutch, and then use of the fine feed increment comes into operation. Now in terms of wheel height, power feed up and down is applied through the use of this knob. And coolant is started with a green button down here. Currently set to a very low thing. I may alter the design of this nozzle. Now let's have a look at this unit down here. First of all, making sure the power feed lever is in the hand position. I have full control of the up and down motion with the traditional hand wheel setup, or I've got fine feed by engaging the fine feed knob and turning it like that. Now if I disengage that and set my trip, I then have power down feed actuated by that lever, and on every right hand table motion I get the preset amount of feed, which is controlled by this knob here. Further out is a more coarse feed. Now just here is a little foot, and above that sits a micrometer barrel, and once the micrometer barrel increments down far enough it will disengage this motion. I'll actuate it by hand. That has now disengaged the down feed, and you can see that the wheel has ceased to turn. Finally I will start the extractor. So that is how I swapped a surface grinder. Thank you to Dan and Ian Burgoyne for helping me move the things out and in. Thank you to Ivan for deciding to sell the machine. Thank you to Duncan for a bit of wiring, and thank you to Phil Brooks and Dave Ticehurst for the parts they played. Now that's quite enough from me. I hope you found this interesting. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next video.